She was the most amazing woman I have ever met in my life.
She was larger than life.
She always thought about things in a positive light.
She was ornery.
She had a wonderful sense of humor.
She was a gutsy lady, a giving mother, a compassionate nurse, a volunteer, and a loyal friend to all.
She was the ultimate patient advocate. She was a nurse's nurse. You know, it was what she was called to do, I think.
She was never afraid to speak her mind.
Oh, she'd get up in a meeting and say whatever she thought, respectfully.
The one thing that I will always thank her for is that she was an awesome mentor.
All you had to do was ask for help, and she was right there.
After about a week of working with Stephanie, I knew what exactly the hot buttons were and how I could press them, and I have to tell you, if I could elicit the response, "You bastard," my day was actually complete.
Even when you weren't in a great mood, she'd get you in a good mood, because she would say something wild or obnoxious, and she'd get you going.
I often said that her personality was as bright as her hair.
You know, her hair color originally was this purplish red thing, and we gave her the nickname, or I did, Big Purple, and for some reason that just carried through Amgen. Actually, that hair color, we said, probably wasn't even on the color spectrum. We couldn't even explain it.
I think Stephanie in her career has always been a strong patient advocate.
She would get frustrated if patients fell through the cracks.
If things weren't going our way, she seemed to get these nice red blotches all over her neck. And I can remember one, we were in a Medicaid situation discussing guidelines for patients, and a pharmacist made the comment in the back of the room, "If we're doing this and it only adds, we're only adding a few months to a year to a patient's life, does that really make a difference?" And I saw her face light up. The blotches started, and we were actually in a building, we were on the 42nd floor of a building, and I thought this woman Stephanie was gonna grab her and take her right out the window.
She wasn't afraid to move forward and say, "This is wrong. We need to do this." She would just move in, you know, where angels fear to tread.
For many years, she was involved in all different kind of volunteerism with oncology-related projects.
I first met Steffi in 2002 when she joined the board of directors of Leukemia and Lymphoma Society.
It's such a twist of fate that she became involved with the society, and then a few years later would be diagnosed with one of the blood cancers.
We have a large walk each year in the fall, and she formed a team from ONS nurses, and she called herself Queen Mom. And she walked that day with tiara and all.
She walked every step of it. She was sick herself being treated, but it didn't matter. She still took the leukemia lymphoma walk and the fundraising as one of her priorities.
She also was involved with our Camp Raising Spirits, which is an adult cancer camp.
When they were away for that weekend, it was an awesome weekend that they could look back on, and they didn't have to talk about the disease or worry about their disease. And that's what Stephanie wanted. She had very tough disease, and there were those who felt she shouldn't go for transplant.
She just looked at me and said, "It's just a bump in the road. It's just a bump in the road." And to think like that she's going through this life-threatening illness, going through her third transplant, and she was trying to comfort me because she saw that I was almost ready to cry, and just saying that it was a bump in the road was pretty remarkable for someone to do that.
I just think of her as this incredible fighter to the very, very end.
Right after she was diagnosed, this crew came together at Amgen and raised over $9,000 for her.
The warmest memory I had was to come to Pittsburgh and promote her in front of her peers before she went in for her last transplant, which was about a month or so before we were supposed to announce the promotions, and her reaction was, you know, priceless. I mean, it was probably the most rewarding thing I've ever done.
The way Stephanie saw her life was everything sort of blended together. It wasn't personal and work. It was all together, her personal life and her work life and her volunteering. I mean, to her, it was just one big family.
Stephanie was very conservative. She never ever spent a tremendous amount of money on herself. Everything was for everybody else. The one thing she did for herself that she considered frivolous was buy this mink coat.
Actually, the last time I saw it on her, we were at a concert together, both families, and she came strolling in the coat and I made fun of it. And she just shot back real fast and said, you know I'm going to be buried in this coat.
She always said to me, and I'm talking about from before the transplant, that if I lose the battle, I want to be laid out in my red pumps and my full-length mink coat. And we'd laugh about it. But she was so serious about it. And when I went to the service and I had a hard time to go say goodbye to her, I had a smile from ear to ear because she was in her full-length mink coat and her red pumps.
Her cell phone was actually rigged up to go to her ear, and that was, she lived with the cell phone. It should have been surgically attached. And then her wig was on a stuffed monkey. Yeah, very apropos, the whole thing. It did bring levity to a tough situation, but that was her. That's the way she wanted it, and by God, we did it.
I still can't sort of wrap my arms around the fact that she's gone, and I still have this, well, not need, but this sort of inclination to whatever it is to want to call her, even though I know she's not here.
Not a day has gone by that I haven't reached for the phone to call her. I pretend that she's still in Pittsburgh.
I'm watching TV with my son, my 12-year-old son, and I was daydreaming about something, and he says, "You're thinking about that lady in Pittsburgh, aren't you, Dad?" And I said, "Yep, I am."
She was a friend that actually moved you for life. You remember her for life.
Steph will be with me forever.
I'll miss her every day.
I miss her. The office is definitely, you walk in, tears are just rolling down some of the nurses' eyes. It's different.
I cannot rationalize why Stephanie would die at such a young age. However, I will tell you, I used to work with a lot of leukemics, and a social worker said to me, "Do you ever get a feeling that sometimes God just loans us people? But they're so special, they're just on loan, and we just don't keep them long enough."
Boy, if I could say one last thing, I don't know, you'd have to bleep the whole thing out probably because that's a relationship we had, but that's okay. We never had loving terms. Well, if we said I love you or something, it was always sarcastically. So seriously and yet sarcastically, I'd have to say yes, I love you, Big Purple. It was a hell of a ride.